G'day, you mob. How's it going? Welcome to this episode of Aussie English, the number one place for anyone and everyone wanting to learn Australian English. Today I have a special episode for you where we're going to learn the pronunciation of 10 different Aussie animals. Let's get into it. Alright, so I often get asked, Pete, how do I say things like koala, kangaroo, and are there nicknames for some of these animals? So I thought today we could go through 10 different Australian animals, how to pronounce their names, and also talk a little bit about Australian English and its pronunciation using the names of these animals. Okay, so number one is koala. Koala. Now, you may notice there the O in the word koala is actually a schwa sound. So you're going to hear right? That neutral vowel sound in English. Koala. So it's not koala or koala, it's koala. Koala. And that's because the emphasis is also on the first A in the word, and you'll hear a W kind of sound, a small W sound linking the schwa sound to that A. Koala. 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 So at the moment, koalas are in a bit of trouble in Australia, right? After the bushfires that we just had in 2019 and 2020, the koalas are having a bit of a bad time, but hopefully they're going to come back from the brink. Koala. Number two will be one that you definitely know. Kangaroo. Kangaroo. So the emphasis is on the first syllable here, kangaroo. Kangaroo. And you'll notice that the second syllable is using a schwa sound. It's reduced. It's not emphasized, so it gets that schwa vowel sound. It's not kangaroo or kangaroo. It's kangaroo. Kangaroo. And then there's a sort of secondary emphasis on the word roo. Well, word roo, on the syllable roo. The word roo is the nickname or the slang term for kangaroo. Okay, so that's secondary emphasis. Kangaroo. Kangaroo. And then we can just say roo if we want to use the slang term for kangaroo, okay? Kangaroo. And you may hear the slang term skippy as well. We used to have a TV show in Australia called Skippy, Skippy the Bush Kangaroo. And it is sort of Australia's version of Lassie, where, you know, a young boy had his little friendship with this kangaroo and they would go around and solve problems and crimes. It was a bit before my time, but it was a TV show that I definitely heard about when I was growing up. Skippy the Bush Kangaroo. Kangaroo and roo. All right, number 3, wombat. Wombat. So the first vowel sound is an O vowel sound, like for the word on or the word off, right? O, wom, wom, wom. And then we have the word bat. Right, so not the animal it's flying. I don't know why we called it wombat, really. I'd have to look into this. But wombat is what we call these little guys. Really, they would be better named as, you know, ground koalas or maybe tunnel koalas or something because they live in burrows in the ground. Wombat. Wombat. So there's no schwa here. Both syllables kind of get equal emphasis. Wombat. Wombat. Have you guys seen any wombats? I don't think we have a slang term for them either. Wombat. Is there a slang term for wombat? I don't think there is. Make sure though that you say the W sound as w. W. I have Iranian and German students who quite often will pronounce this more as a v, wombat kind of sound instead of a w, w, w. So just make sure that the teeth don't touch that bottom lip as a v sound, and instead it's all about the lips widening. Wombat. Wombat. Number 4, echidna. Echidna. So there's no schwa sound here either. It's echidna. Echidna. But the emphasis is on the second syllable. Echidna. So maybe you could use a schwa. Maybe you could say echidna if you really wanted, but I would probably say echidna. More like the vowel sound in the word it, right? Or exist at the very start there. You could probably get away with using a schwa sound if you wanted. Echidna. Echidna. So echidnas are covered in spines. They also burrow, and if they are attacked by a predator, they dig their little feet into the ground, push their spikes out, and they are really hard to sort of flip over and get to, the soft, chewy center, right? If these animals were trying to kill echidnas, they're going to have a bad time, usually. Echidna. And do you know what these guys eat? Ants and termites. Thousands of them. Every single day, they eat thousands of ants and termites, echidnas. And again, I don't know if we have a slang term for echidnas. Echidnas. No, don't think we do. Number 6, dingo. Dingo. And that cliche that Americans will always say when they hear about dingoes in Australia. That dingo's got my baby. Dingoes are native Australian dogs. And this is a bit of a contentious issue, right? They arrived in Australia some 4,000 years ago with, I think the most recent scientific evidence suggests that they came with a group of migrants from India that came to Australia and brought these dogs over. I think they found DNA now in Indigenous people in Australia. And so they know that this migration of people from India happened at about the time that we expect dingoes arrived in Australia. And so there's a contentious issue as to whether or not they're native, because they arrived relatively recently, but still 4,000 years ago, geologically speaking, isn't very long. So the word is dingo. 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 Now, the O sound is one that my students have a lot of trouble with. Check out my video on the Australian O sound. O. The reason this is difficult is because it's a diphthong, and instead of the American O, where it's further at the back of the mouth, O in Australian English is much closer to the front of the mouth. So we start with and then the mouth closes. It sort of goes, the chin comes up, the tongue comes up, and it sounds like ooh, right? So we go O, dingo, dingo, dingo. That dingo's got my baby. Number 7, another one with the vowel sound O. Goanna. Goanna. Goannas are a type of native Australian lizard. They're found also, I believe, throughout Southeast Asia. So they are from the genus Varanus. We have something like 60 species of goannas in Australia. You might see ones like the lacy, the lace monitor, the tree goanna that lives in trees and is closely related to the Komodo dragon. The Komodo dragon is actually a goanna. It's not a dragon. Go figure. It doesn't have wings, but there you go. It is a goanna. And we also have things like the parenti, which is, I think, Australia's second largest goanna. It might be on par with the lacy. But there you go. Goanna. Goanna. And you'll notice there, where's the emphasis on the word goanna? Goanna. It's on the second syllable. And like with the word koala, how are we joining those first two vowel sounds in O and A? Goanna. We're doing it with a W sound. Goanna. 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 So there you go. Goanna. All right. Number 8. Man, this one. Most foreigners learning Australian English tend to nail the pronunciation of this one. They get it pretty good. Americans tend to not. That is because they don't use the yod. So the yod is that y sound that often in Australian English at least, and I think British English too, depending on the dialect, comes before the u sound. So you'll hear the y sound in between the consonant or the vowel sound and the vowel sound u. Y. Okay, so you're going to say emu instead of emu, right? It's not like the sound that a cow makes, moo, moo. It's meh, 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 meh. That yod is in there, that yod. Think Yoda, right? Green guy, big ears, Yoda, yod. Emu, 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 emu. And where's the emphasis? On the first syllable. Emu, emu. Emus are dangerous. So these guys can run incredibly quick. I think they can run up to 60 k's an hour, right? And they can also kick like anything. So if you corner these guys, if they feel endangered, they may give you a bit of a beating with their feet. Emu. Emu. All right, second last one, number 9. Crocodile. Crocodile. There's a few interesting things going on here. Crocodile. So that first vowel sound is O, and then after that, it is a syllable that is reduced. So we have the schwa, crocodile. We have the T flap or D flap that's occurring on the D in the word crocodile. We won't say a hard D there because there are vowels either side. We will say the T or D flap. Crocodile. So this is where the tongue is coming up. It's lightly touching the roof of the mouth as it flicks backwards or forwards. Crocodile. And the I sound is a diphthong as well in Australian English. I. Crocodile. The last thing to mention here is because that L comes at the end of the word and there's no vowel sound after it, crocodile, we can also say it as the dark L, where it's more in the lips going oo instead of the tongue going ul. So you might hear people say crocodile, as opposed to crocodile. And I think there are 2 emphases taking place there. The first syllable and the last syllable. Crocodile. It may even be the main emphasis on the last syllable. Crocodile. The slang term for crocodile is croc. Whoa, there's a big croc over there. Steve Irwin made this famous back in the early 2000s. Love crocs. Crocs rule. Crikey, crocs. Crocodile. The very last one is a relative of the emu, another massive Australian bird that is flightless and looks somewhat like a dinosaur, definitely more so than the emu. The cassowary. So these guys have this kind of horn that grows on the top of their head, and they also have a razor-sharp claw on their feet, kind of like a velociraptor, where they're actually very dangerous. In comparison to emus, these guys are more dangerous, also I believe, and they're found in the rainforests of far north Queensland. Cassowary. So the first syllable is where the emphasis is. It's that ah sound, like cat. Cass, and then we have ower, 2 schwas, at least that's how I'm pronouncing it. Cassowary, and then an E sound at the end. Cassowary. So anyway, guys, that's it. I hope this has helped. I hope it's helped you with your Australian pronunciation as well as learn a bit of biology and learn a bit about Australian animals. I'd love to know from you in the comments below, which of these animals is your favourite animal? Which of these animals do you like the most? You know what? I just realised I missed one. I'm looking at the list here. We went wombat, echidna. I forgot number 4. God damn it, Pete. Number 4 was platypus. Forgive me there, guys. Had a bit of a brain fart. Platypus. How could I forget a platypus? Platypusi. I think platypi is the correct plural there. Platypi are some of Australia's most charismatic and interesting and curious animals. In fact, the story goes that when the first platypus was caught and stuffed and sent back to Great Britain after Australia had been colonised, the people who received that platypus in the museum thought it was a fake. They thought that someone had taken the bill from a duck and sewn it onto the body of an otter and potentially put some, turtle flippers on this animal, and were like, clearly this is not really a real animal. But they found out that the platypus is actually a real animal. These get nicknamed platies, sometimes. Platies. Platypus. So the emphases are on the first and last syllables. Plat-puss, platypus. And what's happening to the T? T flap. 2 vowels either side of it. The T isn't on an emphasized syllable. It becomes a T flap. Platypus. And I believe and again, this could be probably argued, the plural of platypus, like octopus, is platypi or octopi. But I'd say it's 50-50 chances I got that wrong, and someone's going to correct me in the comments. I should have looked that up beforehand. Anyway, guys, that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to check out my pronunciation course. Just go to aussieenglish.com.au/courses. The link will be up the top here or in the description below. But if you're working on your Australian pronunciation, if you are trying to sound more like an Aussie because you are, setting up shop in Australia and you want to just fit in, you want to get a job, you want to embrace Australian life, then make sure you check out that course, as you'll get a lot out of it, and you'll also learn a lot about Australian culture, history, everything like that, as well as pronunciation. Anyway, I'm Pete. This is Aussie English. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Peace.